The air shimmered like liquid glass under the pale, dying sun of Aurelia 7. The planet's jagged mountains stood like the fossilized teeth of some long-extinct beast, their shadows cutting deep into the rust-colored sand. The ground beneath Alara's boots crunched softly, the texture unlike any dust she had known on Earth. Fine, metallic, almost alive. Her helmet visor displayed faint readings. Oxygen thin, trace elements unknown, wind speed stable. It was, by all means, habitable, but not welcoming. Her team had landed less than an hour ago. 3 sleek survey crafts rested in the valley floor behind her, their reflective hulls gleaming faintly in the orange light. A few crew members remained near the ships, setting up environmental probes and perimeter scanners. Alara, however, had wandered farther from the landing site, drawn by the landscape's eerie silence. She had been told to stick to the scanning grid, but curiosity had always been her flaw, and her gift. That curiosity had led her to join the Deep Reach Exploration Corps in the first place. That same curiosity now pulled her toward the darker edges of the canyon ahead. The wind whispered low through the ravines, carrying with it a faint hum she couldn't quite identify. It wasn't the whistle of air passing through rock. It was steadier, almost rhythmic, as if the land itself was breathing. She paused, kneeling to examine a strange crystalline structure growing out of the sand. It looked like frost, except it pulsed faintly with a dull green light. As she reached out a gloved hand to touch it, a shadow moved. Alara's breath caught. She froze, every muscle in her body tensing. Just beyond the ridge, something large and humanoid stepped into view. The figure's skin was a deep, iridescent green, patterned like the hide of a reptile, but smoother, almost metallic under the sun. Broad shoulders, long limbs, and eyes the color of molten gold. Its movements were slow, deliberate, as if it was as curious about her as she was about it. Her mind immediately ran through her training protocols. Unknown life form. Maintain distance. Avoid sudden movements. Initiate first contact procedures only if non-threatening behavior is observed. The creature tilted its head slightly, studying her. The golden eyes didn't blink. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She took a step back, one hand hovering near the emergency beacon on her belt. The alien raised one hand slowly, palms outward, in a gesture eerily similar to a human sign of peace. Its claws were curved but not extended. The hum she'd heard earlier grew louder, resonating in her chest, as if the sound came from the creature itself. Alara lowered her hand from the beacon. Against all logic, she felt no fear now, only an overwhelming awareness that she was standing on the edge of something extraordinary. They stood in silence for what felt like minutes, neither daring to break the fragile connection. Then, without warning, the alien's gaze dropped to her abdomen. It wasn't a casual glance. It was a deliberate focus, a studying. She instinctively rested her hand on her stomach, puzzled. The alien took a cautious step forward. Every muscle in her body wanted to retreat, but she held her ground. It reached out slowly, claws retracting fully, and stopped just short of touching her. The hum deepened, vibrating in the ground beneath her boots. "Alara, we're picking up movement on your position." Her comms crackled with the voice of Lieutenant Vargas from the landing site. She ignored it, unwilling to break the moment. The alien's eyes locked with hers again. There was intelligence there, not just instinct, but thought, and something else, recognition. "Alara, respond." Vargas's voice was sharper now. She opened her mouth to speak, but the alien suddenly shifted, straightening to its full height, easily over 7 feet tall. Its gaze flicked toward the ships, then back to her. For a moment, its expression hardened, as if it understood the threat they might pose. In one swift movement, it stepped back into the shadows of the canyon. "Wait," The word escaped her before she could stop it. She took a step after it, but the alien was already gone, swallowed by the jagged terrain. "Ilara, do you copy?" "Vargas again." "I copy," she said finally, her voice low, her eyes scanning the ridge where the alien had stood. "I saw something." "What kind of something?" She hesitated. Her instincts told her to tell the truth, but some part of her wasn't ready to share this encounter yet. Not until she understood it herself. "Movement," she said. "Could have been wildlife. I'm heading back." As she turned toward the ships, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint hum once more. It was softer now, distant, but still there. Ilara didn't know what she'd just encountered, but deep down, she felt it wasn't their last meeting. Something about the way it had looked at her, especially at her, had planted a seed of certainty in her mind. This planet was not as uninhabited as they'd believed, and whatever lived here had already taken notice of her. The next few days on Virilia, 7 unfolded like a delicate balancing act. Ilara carried out her assigned duties, collecting soil samples, cataloging mineral formations, running atmospheric tests, but her mind was never fully on the work. The image of the reptilian figure lingered in her thoughts, vivid as the moment it appeared. She found herself scanning the ridges and shadowed gullies more than the ground in front of her, hoping, no expecting, to see it again. The rest of the crew noticed her distraction, though no one pressed too hard. Vargas, however, was different. As mission commander, he had a way of seeing through people, and Ilara suspected he knew something had happened out there in the canyon. He didn't ask directly, but his casual check-ins always felt a little too pointed. On the 4th day, a sandstorm rolled in from the western plateau. The winds came first, dry and electric, carrying particles that rattled against the ship's hull. The crew was ordered to remain close to base until the storm passed, but Ilara's curiosity gnawed at her. She knew storms here didn't last long, and something about the electric tension in the air reminded her of the hum she'd heard during her first encounter. As the storm thinned to a dusty haze, she slipped away. The comms network was weak this far from camp, but she didn't care. Guided by instinct more than direction, she retraced her steps toward the canyon. The light was strange, muted and golden through the dust, the cliffs glowing as though lit from within. And then she saw him. The alien stood on a ledge above her, framed against the dying sun. He did not move immediately, only watched as she approached. This time, she didn't hesitate. When she reached the base of the ledge, he descended with fluid grace, his claws gripping the rock as if it were nothing. Up close, his presence was overwhelming. Not just his height, but the way he seemed to radiate energy. She could feel the hum in her bones now, resonating with her heartbeat. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly, though she knew he couldn't understand the words. She raised both hands, palms outward, mimicking his earlier gesture of peace. He studied her for a long moment before extending one hand. She hesitated, then stepped closer, placing her palm lightly against his. His skin was warm, the texture a strange blend of smoothness and fine ridges, almost like polished stone. And then something extraordinary happened. Images began to flood her mind. Not words, not sounds, but pure sensations. The crash of waves against alien cliffs, the scent of metallic rain, the feeling of loss so deep it hollowed the soul. She gasped, stumbling back, breaking contact. The alien tilted his head, a low sound escaping him. Something between a growl and a sigh. It wasn't threatening. It felt almost apologetic. "What was that?" she whispered, though she knew he wouldn't answer. She took a steadying breath and stepped closer again. This time, when his hand touched hers, she focused, letting the sensations come. More images, this time of his people, towering and proud, gathered in a great stone hall beneath a sky of twin moons. Then flashes of conflict, fires in the mountains, ships burning as they fell. And at the center of it all, a symbol carved into stone, a spiral encircling a small sphere. Alara's breath caught. She didn't understand the specifics, but she knew this was a story of survival, and that somehow she was now part of it. They stood like that for a long time, the storm winds swirling around them. She didn't know if hours had passed or minutes. Eventually, he stepped back, pointing toward the ridge where the setting sun painted the rocks in blood-red light. She followed his gesture and saw distant figures, small but unmistakably humanoid, moving toward the base camp. Her chest tightened. If Vargas or the others saw him, it could mean disaster. She turned back to him, urgency in her voice. "You need to go." He didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer, placing a hand lightly against her stomach again, just as he had during their first meeting. She frowned, puzzled, but before she could react, he gave a slow, deliberate nod, as though confirming something only he understood. Then, with a sudden leap, he vanished back into the canyon's shadows. By the time Alara returned to camp, the storm had fully cleared. Vargas was waiting near the airlock, arms folded. "Where were you?" he asked, his tone deceptively calm. "Collecting wind erosion samples." She lied. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Stay within range next time. This planet isn't as empty as it looks." That night, lying in her narrow bunk, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that Vargas was right, but not in the way he meant. Virilia 7 wasn't empty at all, and the bond she'd just formed with its mysterious inhabitant, it was something the rest of her team could never know about. It was more than curiosity now. It was a connection, one she wasn't willing to give up, no matter how dangerous it might be. 2 weeks had passed since Alara's second encounter with the alien. The research mission was entering its final phase, and soon the crew would depart Virilia 7 for the return journey to the nearest orbital station. On the surface, everything was routine. Data logs were full, mineral samples carefully stored, environmental scans complete, but inside Alara, nothing felt the same. She had not told anyone about the connection she'd made, not about the visions, the hum, or the way her thoughts sometimes slipped into images she knew weren't her own, and certainly not about the fact that she had been meeting him, secretly, almost every evening, under the pretense of extended survey work. The alien was no longer just a fleeting mystery. He had a name, or something close to it. In their strange, half-telepathic exchanges, she understood him as Kal-El. He never spoke aloud, but their shared visions had grown sharper, more deliberate. She had learned fragments of his past, his role as a guardian to his people, the devastation of their wars, the slow dwindling of their kind. And lately, Kal-El's focus during their meetings had shifted. He was attentive, protective in a way she couldn't explain. His gaze lingered on her more, his presence closer, his hand often finding its way, almost ritualistically, to her abdomen. At first, she thought it was some alien cultural gesture, a form of greeting or respect. But then came the morning she woke with an unshakable nausea and a faint, unfamiliar heaviness in her lower belly. She dismissed it. Planets with unusual atmospheric pressures could cause all kinds of physiological responses in humans. 3 days later, she knew it wasn't just the planet. The crew's med scanner confirmed it in cold, clinical tones. Pregnancy detected. Alara sat in the infirmary chair, staring at the screen as the numbers and readouts flickered. This was impossible. She hadn't been with another human for months. Her mind immediately went to Kal-El, and she pushed the thought away as quickly as it came. The scanner was malfunctioning. It had to be. Except, deep down, she knew. She didn't remember the moment it had happened, if there even was a moment in the human sense. But something about the strange energy they'd shared, the merging of minds and sensations, seemed suddenly far less abstract. Karel's constant attention to her belly wasn't curiosity, it was awareness. That evening, she sought him out again, trekking to their usual meeting point beneath a jagged overhang in the canyon. The sun was sinking low, painting the cliffs in molten gold. Karel was already there, waiting. He approached without hesitation, his movements purposeful. She didn't speak. Words seemed inadequate. Instead, she pressed her palm to his, letting the hum between them rise. The visions came swiftly, a seed buried in soil that glowed with starlight, a pulse of light growing within it. Two hands, one human, one scaled, cupping the glow together. The image shifted to a child, neither fully human nor fully alien, standing beneath a sky split by two moons, holding a symbol she recognized, the spiral encircling the sphere. Her breath caught. "It's real," she whispered. You knew." Karel stepped closer, his hand settling gently against her stomach again. His eyes, those molten gold eyes, held no uncertainty. In his world, this was not a question. It was a truth. The hum grew deeper, resonating through her ribs, into her bones. For a moment, she thought she could feel the faintest echo of another heartbeat. Small, fragile, but steady. Fear began to claw at her. This wasn't just improbable, it was dangerous. Her crew would never understand. They might see it as contamination, a threat to human biology. And Karel's people, what few of them remained, how would they react to such a hybrid? She pulled her hand back, pacing a few steps away. "I don't know what this means," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what will happen to me to it." Karel followed slowly, his movements calm, deliberate. Another vision touched her mind. Not of war, not of loss, but of a future where the child stood as a bridge between two worlds. A future of unity, fragile but possible. It should have comforted her, but all it did was make the stakes feel heavier. That night, she returned to camp more restless than ever. Vargas was waiting again, his expression hard. "You've been disappearing a lot lately, Ilara. Care to explain?" She forced a smile. "Just trying to make the most of our last days here." Vargas didn't smile back. His gaze flicked, briefly, almost imperceptibly, down toward her midsection, before he turned away. Over the next few days, the symptoms grew harder to hide. She found herself avoiding the med bay, skipping meals, retreating to her quarters earlier than usual. And every evening, when the others were occupied, she met Karel. With each meeting, his visions became more urgent. The child's importance, the dangers ahead, the need to protect it at all costs. On the 12th evening, she found him waiting with something new, an intricately carved pendant, shaped like the spiral and sphere from their shared visions. He placed it around her neck, his clawed fingers brushing her skin with deliberate gentleness. She understood the gesture. This was not just a gift. It was a vow. But vows wouldn't protect them from the storm she knew was coming, because sooner or later, someone on her crew would notice. And when they did, they would not let her leave this planet with Karel's child. And she wasn't sure anyone, human or alien, was ready for what that child could mean. The change began subtly, like the slow tightening of a snare. For the first time since they'd landed, Vargas initiated daily perimeter patrols. His tone shifted during briefings, colder, more watchful. Every instruction now came with an edge, as though the mission had taken on a new, unspoken priority. Ilara felt the shift like static in the air. Whenever she left camp, Vargas's eyes followed her, and the tracking pings on her wrist console grew more frequent. She wasn't the only one he was watching. Extra guards were assigned to the survey teams, and crew members were discouraged from wandering beyond mapped areas. The official reason was predator activity detected on long-range scans. But Ilara knew better. Her nausea had grown worse. The fatigue, the strange warmth radiating from her belly, it was getting harder to mask. And though the crew didn't yet know the truth, suspicion was seeping in. A few sidelong glances, conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. Karel sensed it too. During their evening meetings, his visions grew darker. Shadows closing in around the camp, armed figures searching, the child hidden away in some cavern far beneath the mountains. His urgency pressed into her mind like a drumbeat. Protect it, protect it, protect it. One night, he arrived earlier than usual, his scaled skin damp with exertion, his movements sharper. In his hand, he carried something, a fragment of metal scorched and bent, with faint human serial markings. "What happened?" she asked, though she knew he couldn't answer in words. The vision came. A firefight in the high cliffs, human soldiers, not her crew, firing at a group of Karel's people. Smoke, explosions, the sound of ships breaking atmosphere. When the vision faded, Alara's heart was pounding. "They're sending more," she murmured. "More humans, and they're not here for research." Karel's golden eyes locked onto hers. Another wave of images followed. Vargas in communication with an off-world vessel, a data packet transmitting, a close-up of her own face captured on a screen. She stumbled back, her breath catching. Vargas knew. He might not understand the details, but he had guessed enough. When she returned to camp that night, she tried to act normal, but the tension in the air was almost suffocating. Vargas was in the comms tent, speaking in hushed tones to someone off-planet. As she passed, she caught fragments. Containment protocols, sample retrieval, no civilian leaks. Her blood went cold. Sample retrieval. That was how they were going to think of the child. Not as a person, not even as hers, just a specimen. The following day, the crew's schedule abruptly changed. Survey teams were cut in half, and everyone was assigned rotations guarding sensitive equipment. Alara's shifts kept her closer to camp, under the constant eye of another crew member. She had to find a way to see Karel again, to warn him. That evening, she slipped out under the cover of delivering equipment to the perimeter station. Once she was beyond the range of the camp's main floodlights, she ducked into a ravine and ran. Karel was waiting. This time, he didn't greet her with an open palm. His posture was tense, scanning the horizon, as if expecting danger at any moment. "They're coming for us," she said breathlessly. "They'll try to take—" She stopped, pressing a hand to her stomach. The words felt heavier than she could manage. Karel stepped forward, resting his hand over hers. The hum came again, low and steady. A vision bloomed, the two of them moving through a hidden network of caverns, the child in her arms, a light ahead leading out into some distant, untouched valley. She wanted to believe it could happen, but even in the vision, she sensed pursuit at their backs. When she returned to camp, Vargas was waiting outside the airlock. He didn't speak, only studied her with an expression that made her skin crawl. "You're hiding something," he said at last. "I'm doing my job," she replied, keeping her tone steady. His gaze drifted again to her stomach, so briefly she almost missed it. "We'll see," he said and walked away. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the ship's hull, every faint hiss of the life support systems sounded like approaching footsteps. She kept her hand over her belly, feeling the faint warmth there. By dawn, she had made a decision. She couldn't wait for Vargas to act. She had to get off the ship, away from the crew, before whatever backup he'd called arrived. And she wasn't going alone. The next time she saw Karel, it wouldn't be for another stolen moment. It would be to run. The sky over Virilia 7 was restless that morning. Thin clouds swirling like pale ink in water, the faint shimmer of incoming ships visible far above the atmosphere. They were still too high to hear, but Alara knew they were coming. She could feel the tension rippling through the camp, an unspoken awareness among the crew that something significant was about to happen. She kept her head down during the morning briefing,